Welcome to the National Wildlife Federation Outdoors Podcast. I'm your host, Drew Youngdyke, broadcasting from the Outdoor Writers Association of America Conference here in Little Rock, Arkansas. And since I'm here in Little Rock, Arkansas, I met a writer that seems to be a really interesting guy involved in a lot of conservation projects. And I just thought he had a great story that tied in with our work at the National Wildlife Federation, because he has participated and helped with our work at the National Wildlife Federation, and that is Carrol Sain. Carrol Sain is from Dover, Arkansas. He's a board member of Conservation Hawks, the group led by Todd Tanner that promotes a message of climate change and its impacts on hunting and fishing to drive towards solutions for it. And he's also had writing appear in publications such as Hatch Magazine, and he's participated in fly-ins with NWF's Vanishing Paradise program. Johnny, thank you for joining the podcast. How's the conference going for you?
It's going pretty well. Met a lot of interesting people. Actually, I've got to meet face-to-face a lot of people that I just knew online. Picked up a few good contacts. Got some new ideas, fresh ideas, start writing stories. It's been great.
So you're a very prolific writer. You're a Excellence in Craft award winner, so he's been recognized as one of the best outdoor writers in America. Tell me about what you write about, what draws your interest, what you like to communicate about, and how you feel about that.
Mostly what I don't do a lot of how-tos. I don't do a lot of, where to go kill this big buck or how to catch a bunch of smallmouth bass. I really like to write about the connection that people have with place, with lands, with waters, through hunting and angling. It's a real primeval connection. I think that's why it's really interesting to me. It goes beyond and transcends our cultures. It kind of goes back to the core of humanity. That may be too metaphysical, but that's really the attraction, and I really like exploring that. A lot of stuff I write about are a lot of the things that I write are essays that are my personal explorations of that. But it seems like a lot of the features I write too that are conservation issues, like the Vanishing Paradise, for example. I did a 3-part series on that for Hatch Fly Fishing Magazine, and that's what the focus of that was the human aspect of how people connected to the marsh through fishing. Charlie Bush is one of the guys I visited with down in Louisiana, and I don't know how he is now, but he was one of the lead speckled trout taggers in the program, and man, he loved those fish, and in every way you could love a fish, he did, and that relationship to me was so interesting, and it was something that I could relate to in my outdoor pursuits.
And for more about Vanishing Paradise, go listen to our recent episode with Ryan Schaefer of the Louisiana Wildlife Federation and Bill Cooksey of Vanishing Paradise. Actually, as we're recording this, we just came out of one of the topic presentations here, and Bill Cooksey, as well as Trey Reed from Arkansas, was on a panel talking about the impacts of climate change to fish and wildlife and our ability to hunt and fish. Is that the type of impacts that drove you to get involved with Conservation Hawks?
Yeah, it absolutely was. It's something, and a lot of this is what I utilize this in a lot of my writing. I'm of course concerned with climate change, about the things I'm going to lose in my life. I'm going to lose. I think it's already going to happen. I'm already seeing some of that. I hope we can mitigate that in some ways. But some of the connections to the land and waters through changing patterns, changing precipitation patterns, temperature patterns. And I want to find ways again to alert other outdoors folks about this, so they can maybe work toward helping mitigate it. And I'm also very concerned about how this is going to affect our future generations. My kids are. Both of my daughters are grown now. Actually, my youngest just turned 18, and I've got 2 grandkids. And I want them to be able to experience the outdoors. If they stay in Arkansas, the Arkansas outdoors that I experienced. And I'm really concerned that unless we make some serious changes in our daily habits and our policy, that's not going to be possible. So yeah, that was a big thing. I think that connection to the land, to the water, and to the flora and the fauna that are part of our landscapes. I think that's a very important part of being human. And I think if we lose that, I don't really think we can be. I don't really think we can be truly human. That's who we are. We're part of nature, and so these changes are frankly frightening. And that's really what sparked me, what inspired me to get involved in this.
Tell me about that Arkansas that you grew up in. What were your experiences growing up in Arkansas and in the outdoors that kind of shaped who you became?
Who I am?
Yeah.
Actually, the first experiences was my grandpa. This probably sounds cliche to a lot of folks growing up southern or in the Midwest, but my grandpa was my connection to the wild things. And from my earliest memories, I can't remember a time before I had a fishing pole in my hands. When I was just starting in grade school, kindergarten and in first grade, I rode the school bus to my grandpa and grandma's house, and it seemed like every day he had some critter in a jar for me to look at. It could be a salamander or a lizard or frog or some kind of mouse or shrew. I remember the big one was a snake because my grandma wasn't too crazy about that, but he had a snake for me. And I'm a snake advocate now, so that's Grandpa's fault. But those are my earliest memories. And I can't, again, the outdoors have been so intertwined in my life, I really can't separate who I am from that. From the fishing, the farm ponds and on the creeks. Started squirrel hunting, I think, when I was, 8 or 9. And then it led to deer hunting, and now I'm still eat up with it, 48 years old. And I spend as much time as I can outdoors, primarily in the creeks chasing smallmouth with fly rod in the warm months, and then in the autumn bow hunting whitetails, and then in April in the turkey woods.
What kind of changes have you seen, over those decades already? We talk about a lot about the changes that we kind of don't want to see that would impact the ability of our future generations to have the same experiences that we have. But what kind of changes have you already seen?
When you talk about climate change, it's in the past I've always said, anecdotal evidence is subjective, but really anecdotal evidence is how we experience the world, and then we go to look at the science to explain why this stuff is going on. And so what I've seen, in my own personal experiences, the big one is at the water. It's June, late June, almost July here in Arkansas, and we're standing here looking at the Arkansas River that is rolling pretty strong. At a time of year it should be diminishing, and we've had record floods this spring. And this is it's an anomaly, but it's actually become fairly regular, not to this degree, but in the last several years, I've had to change my fishing habits in the summer. July and August are typically, dry months in Arkansas. We wade the creeks, and it's a lot of wading through riffles, and you got pools you can find smallmouth in. And in the last few years, up in July and August, people have been kayaking on these creeks, and they've been so blown out you couldn't even get on them to wade or to float fish or any of that. So I've seen that directly.
I'm having that experience right now.
Yeah, you're supposed to go to Buffalo, and
I was. So as we're talking,
forgot about that.
I was supposed to go paddle and fly fish for smallmouth on the Buffalo National River, and the water flows are so high that it got canceled. So this is my first time to Arkansas, and I already have weather patterns taking away my opportunity to fish.
And that is not normal.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not. Usually at this time of year, people aren't floating the buffalo that much. The flow's gone down quite a bit. A lot of portaging, but not this year. And it's kind of been that way for the last 3 or 4 years. So yeah, that's a big one. We've had some terrific swings in turkey seasons as far as weather that have really I believe have impacted the flock. Last year we had frost into April, late April, if I remember, mid-April. I know that typically when turkey season starts and we go I hunt in the Ozarks on public land pretty much exclusively. Even up in the northern part, the northernmost I go, there's leaves. It's greening up. It was last spring. There were no leaves. It was cold. It was looked like February, and that's a big one, and that affects our mass crop actually, which is actually affects turkey population and squirrel population, and to a lesser extent deer in the future years. And it seemed like, the year before that, before the frost, we had an excessively warm and wet spring, which affects poult survival. So it's, Arkansas, I guess, like a lot of states say, if you don't like the weather, hang around, it's going to change.
We say that in Michigan too.
Yeah, everybody says that. So weird weather is that's part of it. But when you see weird weather you see a pattern of weird weather over the stretch of years and decades, that's the very definition of a changing climate. And it's really readily visible. I mean, you don't have to look hard to see these changes. What's say after that? I mean, that's what else do you say? I mean,
because you've seen it.
You do.
Yeah.
There's nothing else to see. How do you can't find an argument against it.
And anecdotal evidence is evidence too.
It is.
And especially, we already have the science to back it up, and now we're seeing those first person accounts just multiplied across the country, across time. You ever read Jim Harrison?
Oh yeah, I'm a Jim Harrison. You knew that already. We hadn't talked about it. You knew how to read Jim Harrison.
Well, we didn't talk about Jim Harrison.
No, we didn't.
We talked about Tom McGain. But if you read Tom McGain, you kind of know you listen.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I bring that up though is that Harrison's got a quote that something to the effect of truth is the accumulated perceptions, not just of one person or one entity, but all entities, including the wildlife.
That's an excellent quote.
So what is actual truth? It's not just what I perceive it, but it's what all of us collectively perceive it. All of us, including the wild ones and the wild others, as Shane Mahoney puts it, the wild others.
Actually, I think he stole that from Paul Shepard.
Did he?
The others. Have you read any Paul Shepard?
I haven't.
Okay, you need to read Paul
That's
Shepard.
on my list now.
Okay, yeah.
So those anecdotal evidence, that's in our human experience, that's how we perceive things. And when you're seeing it, when we're having fishing trips for all the outdoor writers of America coming to one place and planning to fish and they can't fish because of something that's becoming more common, that's one anecdotal piece of evidence, but it's a big one.
It is a big one.
We talk about Harrison, and we brought that up just so folks know. Last night, Johnny and I were talking, and we found out we really read a lot of the same folks. And in your profession is in that same vein. It's communicating about the outdoors. What do you think is it about writing and communicating and its ability to change the perception of people about the activities we do, or to give it more meaning?
Oh wow, that's a tough one. Well, for starters, I'm a writer because I'm an introvert and not a great speaker. I have a lot of ideas and my mind never shuts off, but I'm not really great about organizing them on the spot. So I need a keyboard that I can type and delete and go back and write off. But I think because of writing, and I have a chance to go back and fine tune these thoughts and fine tune the delivery, I think I can tailor. And other writers, of course, man, some great writers. That's what they do. They tailor their messages to not only inform, but to actually elicit an emotional response, which is probably the magic in writing. Is you're throwing out all this information and you're helping people understand different things, but at the same time you're also tapping into this really I can't think of the right word here, but it's something deeper than our intellect.
Yeah.
And so that's really my goal as a writer I want to inform, and I want to be objective about the information, but I want to be subjective in the delivery. I want to find a way so when my audience, whoever's reading what I'm writing, that they can connect, with my feelings, my thoughts, and I want to tap into a relationship that maybe they have that's similar. And the great writers that have inspired me and that changed my way of thinking, that's what they did. We talked about David Peterson. Mm-hmm. Lord, Heart's Blood, that book, I read it 6 times. The first 3 times it pissed me off because he challenged. Can you say pissed? I can change that.
Yeah, we can say it.
Okay.
This is the NWF, the National Wildlife Federation Outdoors podcast. That outdoors brings us into deer camp sometimes.
Sometimes it gets a little crude. But anyway, it pissed me off the first 3 times I read it because he challenged so many ideas already that I had that I thought were, sacred, I guess. I don't know. But he challenged those ideas, and he did it in such a powerful way that I had to go back and read it again and read it again and read it again. And then it finally started clicking. He tapped into that. Some of the other great writers, Leopold, of course, Harrison, and some of the modern journalists today. Hal Herring, who's a huge name in the industry, he's one that did that for me. Todd Tanner, the president of Conservation Hawks, he's another one. Chris Madsen. It's all these great writers. Yeah. They all do the same thing.
Who was sitting next to us?
Yeah, Chris
earlier
had
today.
I'm honored to call Chris and Todd and actually Hal all friends. Yeah. But Chris was here and I got to visit with him quite a bit. But all these guys, these great communicators, have found that formula where they can inform and also inspire, and again touch some things that go beyond our intellect. That's what writing is to me, and I think that's what good writing is. That's what I strive for.
At last year's Outdoor Writers Association of America meeting in Fort Wayne, Andrew McKean spoke, and what I remember of that is he talked about the purpose of what we do, to inform, to entertain, to inspire. But the other thing that he said was to provoke.
Oh yeah, now that Edward Abbey said that too.
Yeah.
He said the job of the writer, I think, is to challenge the culture.
Yeah, and that reminded me when you were talking about challenging. And I think when we talk about climate change, we're almost automatically doing that in some way with a lot of readers. We also do that when we talk about hunting with non-lead. We're provoking a little bit. We're challenging a little bit. But isn't that's what Leopold did? Leopold didn't come out and just write what everybody was already thinking.
No, again, that's our job, and Abbey said it the best, Edward Abbey, and I think that's almost exactly what he said. It's the job of the writer to be a critic, and it's absolutely the job of the outdoor writer to be a critic of the outdoor culture. And if you're not challenging and finding ways to make things better, then it gets stagnant or it dies or it just wallows in something we don't want. And if nothing else, I've done that. A lot of the stuff I've written has challenged some long-held ideas in hunting and fishing culture, and specifically in Southern culture, Southern outdoor culture. But I'm a product of that culture. There's no one I don't think that's could be a better critic than someone that's grown up in it and can see some ways that we can make it not only more sustainable but more thoughtful. That's absolutely part of my job description.
Well, and it has to be somebody who can bring that authenticity.
Oh yeah,
to challenge it. When we talk to hunters and anglers about things like non-lead, we can do that because we're hunters and anglers.
Exactly.
I couldn't come in not participating myself and start telling you what to do.
No, I haul 5 deer at least in the bed of my truck every year. I usually have tooth marks on my thumb, and usually some hooks that have been, spots where hooks have been embedded as well. But yeah, I'm part of the tribe, so and been doing it for, like I said, as long as I can remember. So who better to do that? And that's part of our job. And I take that cue again, the legends from yesterday and the ones today, they're doing the same things, man. That's what they're doing. So that's what I'm striving to do too.
In addition to conservation hawks, you participated too with Vanishing Paradise and with the Arkansas Wildlife Federation. What are some of the other conservation causes that you've been involved in here in Arkansas nationally?
I've done some work, I guess, kind of indirectly for backcountry hunters and anglers. Did a story about national monuments when they were doing a big push to raise awareness of that. I actually got to go to Florida Bay earlier this year and write about the issues with Okeechobee from the south end. Recently went to the Boundary Waters, and I think I'm going to be able to work up a good story about, they're talking about mining some places up there. If you have not been in the Boundary Waters, and especially for a Southern boy, that is like another planet. Moose and wolves and frost in June and crazy stuff. And big smallmouth too, by the way. If you're in the smallmouth, that's where to go.
Well, and I'm based in the Great Lakes region. I haven't been there myself, but actually our episode that we recorded in January was with my colleague Jason Dinsmore. And Jason is based in Rochester, Minnesota.
Okay.
Works really extensively on the Boundary Waters with the sportsmen for the Boundary Waters, and folks can get kind of more deep into that issue too by going back and listening to that episode. But that's something that when you hear about it from somebody from Minnesota, there's a certain perspective. But it's really interesting hearing about how impactful it is for somebody from a different part of the country as a draw to that area.
It was a beautiful country, and again, so alien that it was, I was so Canadian the whole time. This is so weird. There's nothing like back home, but that made it even, better. But those are some on the bigger scale here in Arkansas. We recently had a really big victory with the Buffalo River, the CAFO, the hog farm that was on the tributary of the Buffalo. Our governor stepped in and did some great stuff. They basically bought out the farm. They're going to close it down. The farmers are going to get a payout. They're going to be okay, and then we can start healing that watershed.
For people that don't know about that issue, tell us about that CAFO. That's a hog farm within the watershed of the Buffalo National River.
Well, the
right?
Buffalo National River is our nation's first national river, designated in 1972 after they saved it from being dammed.
Yeah. This is, by the way, where I was supposed to go fishing tomorrow.
It's an iconic river. Yep. In Arkansas. It's probably our most well-known natural treasure. I don't know. We kind of take it for granted, I think, sometimes because it's always, we've been there and it's always been there. But it was designated our first national river in 1972, and then I believe it was in 2012. I won't get too far into the weeds, but there was a CAFO, which is a large swine operation. I think, I can't remember the numbers, and I've written about it pretty extensively, but I think there was 2,500 head of sows and boars, and then a whole bunch of little pigs came out. I mean, they were breeding pigs. A lot of pigs came out. But anyway, the problem really is that the Ozark Mountains, again, try not to get too lost in the weeds here, but the Ozark Mountains are limestone. It's all water-soluble rock and really thin soils. And that water-soluble rock is why we have caves and sinkholes and crystal clear springs and all that good stuff. And the Buffalo River, all those clear creeks full of smallmouth. That's why we have them. But that also means that they are very, very vulnerable to anything that's applied to the topsoil. It gets into the groundwater and in the creeks very quickly because that rock is porous. Water flows through it and carves it actually. So when you apply nutrients to an area that is pretty nutrient poor on thin soils, all that manure, all those phosphates and nitrogen quickly go into seep past the soil into the limestone, and they get into the water. They've done some, it's hard to find hard evidence on it, but they've done some dye tests where they actually put dye into some wells nearby, and they saw the dye pop up in the creek and in different creeks all over the place. So there was some, scientists were pretty aware this was going on, and we saw increased algal blooms on the river, a lot of anecdotal evidence. So that was a big issue. Arkansas Wildlife Federation, National Wildlife Federation, Buffalo River Watershed Alliance, several other organizations here in the state really stepped up and were vocal. We had some great journalists here in town. in Little Rock that actually wrote about it extensively in the Democrat Gazette. I got to write a couple pieces about it. One big piece in Arkansas Life magazine. There was also the Food and Environment Reporting Network to help out with that too. So we all worked together to bring awareness to this issue, and like I said, our governor stepped up and said, okay, enough's enough. We really need to protect this treasure in the state. And so again, the state's going to be buying out the farm. Farmers going to be okay. And then we're going to work on healing the watershed. There's also a moratorium. There will be no more swine farms, big swine farms, CAFOs, in the Buffalo River watershed from here on out. So yeah, that was a great victory. A cause that I've been pretty passionate about. One of the big reasons I've been passionate about is, and I do spend some time on the Buffalo, not a lot, but as our first national river, you would think it would be due some amount of respect.
Yeah.
And so you wonder, if they can do this to our first national river, what the hell are they going to do to our little creeks? The ones that don't have this designation, the ones that I fish in, the ones that my friends fish in. What does that mean for them? And so that was really my big push behind it. We need to set a baseline here that we're not going to allow this, and hopefully this idea of conservation, realizing how precious our waters are, our creeks are. Hopefully it trickles down, so to speak, to our other little creeks that maybe aren't quite as well known.
Well, and speaking of conservation trickling down, that seems like what's happening through your writing and through the writing of other outdoor writers that bring that conservation voice and message. How do you see that moving forward? What are you looking forward to in the near future, or maybe the long-term future, with both your writing and projects and the impact that you want to see from them?
With writing and projects, I'm really very fluid on that. I really quit trying to plan out my life a while back, and I'm just really open to opportunities that come along, and I'm always looking for them, and I really can't speak to what I have planned because I don't know yet. I have some stuff on the, in the works that may pan out, but I don't know for sure. But I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing anyway, to a greater degree, hopefully, and to larger audiences. As to, what we're doing as writers and maybe how it's influencing the outdoor culture, I'm actually pretty optimistic. Lots of times it feels like you're just screaming into the abyss and nobody's hearing you, or you're preaching to the choir. You get the attaboys from everybody that already thinks like you, and you're wondering if you're really doing any good. But actually, I'm seeing progress. Got one good friend of mine, and I'm going to make sure he hears this. We don't agree on much of anything, but we always make time to go turkey hunt at least a couple days during the season, and we argue and debate the whole time. But we're debating. Nobody's sulling up. Nobody's getting mad. We're talking. We've got actually very similar concerns, actually identical concerns. Our concerns are exactly the same. We often disagree on the solutions. But we're both listening. We're both talking. We're both listening, and I see that actually in a broader. I see that in the community. It's a little slower than I want it to be, but I think attitudes are changing for the better. I think hunting and fishing going forward. I think there was concern there for a while that it's not going to survive. These next two generations coming after me, I'm Gen X. Millennials and Gen Z, man, they're not going to do that. I don't see that. I see young people involved, and even young people that aren't necessarily out there with a rod or with a gun. I see their attitudes about hunting and fishing aren't negative. And of course, I live in a rural area, but even across the nation, from what I gather, I don't see. I see actually more and more hunters and anglers, I think, are gaining. There's more of a positive image, and I think that's entirely due to changing attitudes within the hunting and fishing community about how we treat our resources, about how we view wildlife, how we view fish. I think that the writers ahead of me and the writers, my contemporaries, and hopefully myself, I hope that we are. I know those guys have affected it, and I hope that I can continue to swing it that way, to bring a more thoughtful outdoorsman. I guess that's what we want to do, create a more thoughtful outdoors culture.
Johnny, thank you so much for joining the National Wildlife Federation podcast. I'd ask you another question, but I can't think of a better way to end than,
I don't have very
with
many,
that message.
Yeah, and I don't have very many more good words in me, so that's probably
man, I've read a little bit of your stuff. You're always full of good words.
Oh, thank you.
Where can folks find more of your writing?
I write a lot for Hatch Fly Fishing Magazine, Mid-Current Fly Fishing Magazine. I'm doing some stuff for Quail Forever now. I actually do a lot for Arkansas Life magazine, which I'm very proud to write for here in Little Rock, here in Arkansas. Probably it is the state's preeminent publication. And in the future, man, I'm looking like I might get to write for the Drake. I don't know if I'm gonna jinx that, but let's see, Sporting Classics. Man, I lose track. Whoever will buy my stuff usually who I sell it to. So.
And do you have a website that people?
Oh yeah, I do. I've got a list of bylines on the website actually, so you can see things I've written and where. It's philosophicalhillbilly.com, and I've got a couple blog posts on there that are a little controversial, but like I said, writers are supposed to challenge and critique. So. And I'm not just outdoors and conservation and environmental concerns are a big thing I write about, but I'm also very interested in rural culture, again because I grew up in it. I'm part of it, so I also tend to cast a critical eye to that as well, and sometimes write about it. My next big piece too, I'm gonna plug this one because I'm really proud of it. It's in Arkansas Life. You can find it online when it comes out in July. It's about moonshine. Really a fun piece to write, and really indicative of a good snapshot of rural culture in Ozarks, I think.
That's terrific. Johnny, thank you for joining the podcast. My name is Drew Youngdyke. I'm the host. This is the National Wildlife Federation Outdoors Podcast, and it is supported by Rep Your Water. As a Great Lakes partner for Rep Your Water, 3% of their Great Lakes gear, as well as 50% of our Stop Asian Carp collaboration, goes to our Great Lakes Regional Center for National Wildlife Federation to help our efforts to reduce Asian carp populations throughout the country and keep them out of the Great Lakes.